Let's be honest. The name itself, the brain-eating amoeba, sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, right? And that name alone is enough to make you feel a little uneasy. But fear really thrives on the unknown. So today, we're going to flip the lights on, pull back the curtain, and move from fear to the facts. Let's get past the scary name and actually understand what we're talking about.
So what is this thing really? It's got this terrifying reputation, but to understand the risk, you first have to understand the organism itself.
Okay, so its scientific name is Naegleria fowler. It's a tiny, single-celled organism, and it absolutely loves warm, still, fresh water. We're talking lakes, ponds, hot springs, and yeah, even swimming pools that aren't chlorinated properly. But the amoeba itself isn't the problem. It's the devastating brain infection it can cause, which is called PAM, or primary amoebic meningoencephalitis.
And this is what makes this infection so unbelievably terrifying. This is the case fatality rate for PAM, over 97%. Now, let me be clear. Getting this infection is incredibly rare, but when it does happen, it is one of the deadliest infections known to science, almost always fatal.
And it's not just deadly, it's shockingly fast. The first symptoms can show up anytime within about 12 days, and they look a lot like regular meningitis. Fever, a really bad headache, vomiting. But then it progresses so quickly. Within days, you're looking at a stiff neck, confusion, even seizures. And very often, death occurs in less than a week. It's so fast that it's often misdiagnosed until it's too late.
So this is probably the most important thing we're going to cover. How does someone actually get infected? There's a ton of misinformation out there, so we are going to bust the biggest myth right now. Understanding this is the key to prevention.
Okay, listen up, because this is the single most important fact. Infection happens one way and one way only. When contaminated water gets forced up the nose. That's it. You cannot get it by swallowing contaminated water. You cannot get it from another person. The amoeba's only highway to the brain is through the olfactory nerve, right at the top of your nose. So activities like swimming, diving, or even using unboiled tap water for nasal rinsing are the risks. Drinking the water, not a risk for PAM.
All right, to see how this all plays out in the real world, let's take a look at a recent public health challenge in Kerala, India. This 2025 case study really brings all these facts to life.
In August of 2025, this rare threat became a tragic reality. 3 people died from PAM, including a young child and even an infant. And here's the crucial detail. The source wasn't a public lake or a swimming pool. The amoeba was found in the well water at their own homes. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how close to home an environmental risk can be.
Now, here's why health authorities reacted so quickly. When you look at the numbers, you can see that just partway through 2025, they had already seen more cases than in the entire previous year. Now, this doesn't mean it's spreading like the flu, not at all. It means that something in the environment was creating more risk, and that was the signal for an immediate, urgent response.
So what do you do when you see data like that? Well, the authorities in Kerala launched a massive coordinated effort. They didn't treat it like a contagious outbreak. They treated it for what it is, an environmental problem that needed an environmental solution.
And their response, called the Water is Life campaign, was incredible. We're not just talking about a few posters. This was a full-scale, top-to-bottom strategy. They went out and did mass cleanings and chlorination of wells. They made it mandatory for hotels and theme parks to chlorinate. They went into schools to teach kids, handed out leaflets on exactly how to do it right, and even threatened legal action for anyone who didn't comply. This is what tackling a problem at its source looks like.
And if you want to understand the sheer scale of this effort, just look at these numbers from a single district. In only 2 days, health workers managed to get to over half of the more than 360,000 private wells. That is a massive mobilization, a real all-out effort to sanitize the water sources across the entire region. And this right here is the key takeaway from their entire response. And I'm going to repeat it because it is so important. This is not a contagious outbreak. It's not a plague spreading from person to person. It is an environmental sanitation challenge. And that means it is preventable. It is something we can solve with targeted actions like chlorination and public awareness.
So, what does this all mean for you and your family? How can you take these lessons and use them to stay safe? Well, the really good news here is that prevention is actually pretty straightforward, and it works.
It really all comes down to 4 critical steps. Number 1, and this is the big one, keep water from going up your nose. Simple as that. Use a nose clip or just keep your head above water when you're in warm lakes or rivers. Second, try not to stir up the mud and sediment at the bottom of shallow water, because that's where the amoeba likes to hang out.
Third, and this is non-negotiable if you use a neti pot or do any kind of nasal rinsing, only use sterile, distilled, or water that you've boiled and let cool. Never, ever use water straight from the tap. And finally, if you own a pool or a well, just maintain it properly. That's it. These simple habits are your best defense.
Now, in the extremely rare event that something does go wrong, you have to know these red flags. If you or someone you're with was just in fresh water and then develops a severe headache, fever, stiff neck, get to an emergency room immediately. And this last point here is the most important piece of advice I can give you. You must tell the doctors about the recent water exposure. That one piece of information can be the difference between a correct diagnosis and a fatal delay. It is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so let's zoom out for the big picture. We've gone through the science, the real-world example, and the ways to stay safe. The final message here is not to be afraid of going for a swim. It's to be smart and disciplined about it.
And I think this quote just sums it up perfectly. Don't panic, get disciplined. This isn't about living in fear, it's about having good procedures. Think about it like the military. They don't just hope for the best, they have strict protocols to prevent accidents. In the same way, we can use simple rules, like keeping water out of our noses, to prevent this rare but ruthless tragedy.
And that brings us to our final big question. We know Naegleria fowleri loves warm water. As our planet gets warmer, the places where this amoeba and other organisms can thrive, well, those places are going to expand. The situation in Kerala is a powerful preview of the link between our environment and our health. And it leaves us with this to think about. Is your community prepared for the environmental health challenges of a warmer world?